Well, we can speak now to the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves. Before we get on to those strikes and some of the Labour policy, I just want to come off the back of the interview we've just had to talk about Northern Ireland. Brandon Lewis there saying that the legislation published tomorrow will not break the law. Do you believe him?
Well, we haven't seen the legislation yet, but it does look like the government plan to break international law. Now, this government seemed to be developing a record for law breaking, and it's not one that the Labour Party can support. We helped bring in the Good Friday Agreement. We are deeply, passionately committed to it. We want the Northern Ireland Protocol to work, but we know to get it to work, we have to negotiate and work with our European partners. Now, Keir Starmer was in Belfast and Dublin last week, talking to leaders, talking to businesses, showing the leadership that, frankly, is lacking from the Prime Minister today.
So, what exactly do you want to happen then with the Northern Ireland Protocol?
There's some very practical things, Sophie, that could happen pretty much straight away. The first would be to get a bespoke veterinary agreement between the EU and the UK to help speed up the movement of goods and services, not just between Northern Ireland and the rest of Britain, but also between the UK and the rest of the European Union. New Zealand has got a veterinary agreement with the EU. It can't be beyond the wit of the EU and the UK to negotiate one of those, so you don't have this huge bureaucracy and delays at the border, which are causing so many problems, particularly in Northern Ireland, but also at Dover as well. So there are practical things like that that require statecraft. They require building of trust. And those are the things that Boris Johnson has not been able to do. And those skills and those abilities, I believe that Keir Starmer has those in spades.
Right, let's talk about the strikes then. It's something that many of our viewers are going to be really concerned about in the weeks and months ahead. According to the Sunday Telegraph today, the government's reportedly ready to remove a legal restriction that was introduced under Tony Blair that would prevent employers hiring agency workers to cover striking staff. Would you back the use of agency workers?
It just doesn't make any sense. You know, the way to resolve this is to get people round the table, but the idea that you can replace a skilled trained signaller with an agency worker, would you feel safe going on a train knowing that it was an agency worker rather than a properly skilled and trained signaller? I know that I wouldn't. So instead of this fanning the flames and increasing tensions, the government need to act like firefighters rather than arsonists and try and get some resolution to this, because the people that will pay the price if these strikes go ahead are ordinary working people who want to go out to work, people who need to get to doctor's appointments and to have operations in hospitals, businesses who, after everything they've gone through, need their workers in the office. But also people who work in the train industry will lose pay if they're not going to work. So nobody wants these strikes to happen. The government, though, are not an observer in all of this. They're an actor, and they need to be getting people around the table and resolving these disputes instead of fanning the flames of the fire.
This week, your Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, said, put it this way, if I was a member of the RMT and my job was at risk like this, then I would be voting to go on strike. Would you be voting to go on strike?
Well, they've already had those votes, those decisions made, but it's not too late to avert the strikes. And you know, I'm not a train driver. I'm sorry, Rachel Reeves.
I'm sorry, Rachel Reeves. I'm going to have to come in on that because that really wasn't a straight answer at all. Would you be voting to go on strike if you were an RMT worker?
Well, look, I want to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Sophie. That is the job that I aspire to do. And if I was Chancellor of the Exchequer today, I would be doing everything within my power to avert these strikes. That's what people want from a government that is on the side of ordinary working people, trying to resolve problems rather than to fan the flames. And that's the job that I want to do. I want to be the Chancellor of this great country. And if I was Chancellor, I would be doing everything I can to avoid the huge disruption that will come from strike actions, and that's what I want to see from this Prime Minister and this Chancellor.
I spoke to the RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch on the show a little while ago. He said, "I've seen no response from the Labour front bench that says we support the workers in their struggles. If we just get this bland Democratic Party sitting in the centre of politics, taking their instructions off the Daily Mail, not getting behind workers' struggles, you have to ask yourself, why do they actually call themselves the Labour Party?" Do you think he has got a point that you're being a bit bland?
Well, look, the Labour Party are the party of working people. The clue is in the name, and I'm incredibly proud of the relationship between the Labour Party and our trade unions. And like the rail unions, we don't want to see agency workers coming in who are not qualified to do jobs, that are putting public safety at risk. But look, we also want to do everything we can to avert these strikes. And I know that the people who work in the train industry don't want these strikes to happen either. They want a government that's on their side, that tries to resolve these disputes. And if, as I say, Sophie, if I was in government today, that would be my #1 priority.
OK, now today you're criticising the Conservative Party for what you're calling its sticking plaster approach to deep economic policies. But just to talk about Labour, because I've been asking Labour politicians, for some weeks now, what's the big transformative idea, the vision, if you like, from the Labour Party. Annalise Dodd says it's to buy, make and sell more in the country. Pat McFadden told me it's about 200,000 children living in areas with no outstanding schools. Lisa Nandy said good, clean jobs. Keir Starmer talked about a windfall tax to reduce energy bills. I just can't help thinking, is the reason that everyone seems to give a different answer to this question because there isn't a single big transformative policy from the Labour Party?
I mean, the great thing about those answers, Sophie, is it shows that the Labour Party is buzzing with ideas. And indeed, Labour is winning the battle of ideas in politics today. You see that with the U-turn from the government on the windfall tax. And I remember speaking on your programme back in January when I first started calling for a windfall tax. And government ministers said, oh, we can't do that because the energy companies are struggling and it would stop investment. And 5 months later, the government bowed to the inevitable, introduced that windfall tax. And, if the Tories have run out of ideas, and they clearly have, then we've got plenty more of them. As Annalisa has said, our plans to buy, make and sell more in Britain. As Lisa says, our plans to ensure that every part of the country has jobs that pay a decent wage, where the government matches the ambition that people have for their families and their communities. So Labour Party are buzzing with ideas. Under Keir's leadership, we are winning the votes of people who turned away from Labour at the last couple of elections, and we'll continue to set out more of those ideas, as I am doing today on Labour's plans for a stronger and more secure economy. Because as well as that windfall tax, which is much needed to tackle the cost of living crisis right now, we do need more than a sticking plaster approach. We need to be boosting our energy security, our supply chain security, security for businesses, because only by doing those things will we boost the economic security of families and family finances right across the country.
Now, I know you are obviously a Keir Starmer loyalist, but ever since, of course, he said that he would resign if Durham police found against him, there's been lots of leadership speculation. It feels like every time that Wes Streeting or Lisa Nandy open their mouths, people see it as a leadership pitch. And I was just thinking before this interview, I'm not sure if anyone's actually asked you the question. Would you fancy a run at the leadership at some point, if the opportunity were to arise?
But there's not the opportunity is not there. Keir is the leader of the Labour Party.
Not a denial, though, is it?
And he said quite rightly that if he is fined. Well, I said a moment ago, I want to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. The only thing I don't like about my job title today is the shadow at the beginning of it. I want to be the Chancellor.
I'm absolutely not saying
the first Green Chancellor. That is what I want to do.
I'm absolutely not saying that you're not a Keir Starmer loyalist, and that's why I sort of introduced the question with that proviso. But that is definitely not a ruling out, is it?
But there's nothing to see here. There's no leadership contest. But the point about Keir saying that he would resign if he was fined was to show the contrast, really, between Keir Starmer, a man of honesty, integrity, of decency, who wants to restore those values of trust and decency to politics and public life, compared to a rule-breaking Prime Minister who has no respect for the ministerial code, for the conduct of politics, politics. And that's why I'm so proud to stand here as a member of Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, and why I'm so desperate to get rid of this Prime Minister with the bluster and the failure to rise to the challenges of the country, and at the same time his lying and cheating that is so discrediting this government and our country.
OK, Rachel Reeves, thank you very much indeed. Rachel Reeves there, Shadow Chancellor.
Thank you.